Hello YouTube, my name is Tyler and this is my November wrap-up. So if you have poked around on my channel before, you know I vlog weekly and I give my thoughts on the books that I have read more in depth in those vlogs. So I usually just list the books I read. However, this week, the last week of November, I did not finish any books until the last 24 hours of the month of November. So there is no vlog. So for those books that I finished, I will talk about my thoughts when I get to them when reading the books that I have read this month. So let's hop into it. So this month I read From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler by E.L. Koningsberg, 3 stars. Dementia 21 and the second volume of Dementia 21 by Shintaro Kagu. I gave the first one 5 stars and the second one 4 stars. The Dawn of Everything, A New History of Humanity by David Graeber and David Wengrow, 5 stars. Sleepwalking by Meg Wurlitzer, 3 stars. The Three-Body Problem by Cheshin Liu, 2 stars. By The Hidden Culture, History and Science of Bisexuality, 4 stars. Herland by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, 4 stars. In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, 5 stars. Okay, so that was the last book that I read in my week 3 vlog. So the next 3 books are books that I read in the last week of November that I have literally just finished. So Nightcrawling by Layla Motley, I gave this 3 stars. It was more like 2.5, so it got rounded up. I don't know. I should have just trusted my gut. The first couple times I saw people talking about this, I was like, that does not seem like something I would enjoy. And then I don't remember who talked about it, but I was like, I'll give it a shot. I read this digitally, which I have been struggling with in general. My main problem with it was it read very YA, even though the topics, the subject matter is very heavy and dark. The main character is 17 and 18 through the book, like she turns 18 in the book. And I don't know, apparently I think the author wrote this when she was around 17 or started writing it, and I don't know, it just had that YA feel to it. The way the descriptions and metaphors were written just felt very YA to me. But I can see why people like it, and it definitely kind of fits that like contemporary, maybe literary fiction. I feel like it's a little short for literary fiction. It's under 300 pages. But you know, I get why people like it. I just should have trusted my gut and known that like it was not gonna be a winner for me. The Invisible Women, Data Bias in a World Designed for Men by Caroline Corrado Perez, 1 star. I wrote an actual review for this and I'll just read this Goodreads review to you because I feel like it will be more coherent than me trying to talk about it right now. I left my phone upstairs, so I had to go grab it. Okay, so my review. This is a list of stats that ignores trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming folks and barely acknowledges or touches on race or class. There's barely any solutions offered and there's no analysis or critique of the few that are. For example, in the beginning, there is a chapter about women's travel patterns and how many are afraid to use bus stops at night. She says men want cameras and women want security guards and basically leaves it at that. Immediately, my spidey senses start tingling. What about Black, Indigenous, and people of color, both men, women, and non-binary, who are more at risk for police violence, who also need to use public transportation? This does not examine in any detail the intersectionality of folks' different identities. The author's solution for everything seems to be talk to women, which in theory I don't disagree with, but what women exactly is she asking us to speak with? It seems to me the answer is cis, mostly white women. Yeah. That's the long and short of it. It was so stat-based. There was no analysis, there was no critique, there was no trying to fit it into other like political or sociological theories or context. I don't know, it just did not work for me. And I eventually determined that the author is a trans exclusionary radical feminist, otherwise known as a TERF, which really explains a lot. In the beginning it started out kind of okay, and I was like, oh, maybe we'll get to more gender inclusive things near the end, or she'll address why she was mostly talking about cis women through this whole thing, but it never comes. It's never addressed. And it makes sense if she is a TERF. So anyways, that's my thought on it. And then I finished one other book. That was The Basic 8 by Daniel Handler, gave it 5 stars. This is one of my favorite books. It's about, I have talked about this many times. I've reread it many times. It is about a girl named Flannery, her friends, her friend group. There are 8 of them. And it is her journals about a murder that happens at their high school. And it's just one of my favorite books. It's definitely, I will say, like, it's written by a white man in the 90s. And some of it does come off just like a little dated and a little just kind of odd. And some of it is like, they aren't good people necessarily. And some of it is just like the 90s. And so like, I do think maybe you should go into it with a little caution, maybe, if you're sensitive to stuff like that. The F slur is used in this, which I forget every time until I read it. And it is used in a cruel way. But again, these are not good people necessarily. So do what you will with that information. I will say, every time I read this, there is something new that I pick up, and there's a lot of different things that I picked up in this one that I'm like not going to get into because it would spoil other stuff. But I really enjoyed the satanic panic elements in a way that I haven't in the past, because I have been reading so much satanic panic stuff this year. So the little, I mean, it's like not a lot of it, and it's not very detailed, but the backdrop of the satanic panic and the elements, the little clues about the satanic panic, I found very enjoyable on this read. So those are the books I read this month. I read 12 books this month. I DNF'd 3 books. Only one of them, actually, I think I DNF'd 4 books this month because American Psycho isn't on here. That's a soft DNF, and No More Police, also a soft DNF, but Sleepwalking and the Topeka School, hard DNFs. I'm not gonna try again. Okay, other stats. It took me an average of 8.3 days to read a book this month. That makes sense. There are a lot of long reads here. I was really struggling to find the motivation to pick up books, to make progress on books. The ones that I read the quickest were audiobooks. So yeah, the motivation to like physically read has just not been there. I've just been, I don't know, tired, busy, whatever. It's interesting because usually this is the time where I read the most, and it's actually been slowing down quite a bit from the summer, and it's been a lot more of a fight. But it is what it is. We all go through cycles, you know, and I still read 12 books this month, so it's not like a bad thing. So for my ratings, I actually only did 11 books in my ratings because The Basic 8 is one of my all-time favorite books. I've reread it lots and lots of times, and so the adding it to the ratings seems wrong. So that ends up being 3.5 stars, which is interesting because I feel like this has been kind of a off reading month for me, but I guess the books that I have really liked, I have really liked, so it is what it is. All right, TBR stats. My physical TBR shelf went from 18 books to 19 books. I did buy a couple books this month, so I will show you those. The one that got added to my TBR shelf is The Impossible Community, Realizing Communitarian Anarchism. Bought this because I got interested in anarchy after reading The Dawn of Everything. And I picked this up from the like anti-fascist anarchist bookstore in Charlottesville. If you happen to be in Charlottesville, Virginia at some point, you should check out F12 Info Shop. They have a nice little selection of political books, both theory and like more broad on lots of different topics. So socialism, anarchy, queer theory, feminist theory, all sorts of theory. The other two books I bought, I have read before, but did not own. So I bought Why Fish Don't Exist. I listened to this audiobook. It was one of the first audiobooks I ever really truly loved. And this cover is just, I don't know if you can see, it's gold foiled. I just thought it was so beautiful. So I bought it, and maybe I'll read it at some point. And there are like illustrations in it, which I did not know until I saw it physically. So yeah. The other book that I bought was Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer. Again, this is a book that I loved. It doesn't seem like a book I would love, especially at the time. Now I know more that I do tend to like a survival wilderness story. So really just enjoyed this, love this. I read a library copy, and then I almost bought a used copy at a different bookstore a couple weeks ago. And then I ended up finding this new for cheaper than the used bookstore. So that ended up working out. And there's like a map in the cover, and there's illustrations here too. I don't have any plans on rereading Into Thin Air, but it was such a amazing reading experience. I needed to have it on my shelf at some point. So those are the books that I have bought this month. My Goodreads TBR shelf has gone from 114 books to 114 books. I have just been reading stuff off my TBR shelf, and I've been reading at the rate that I am adding stuff to my TBR shelf. So, there's not too much to complain about that. And it's lower than it has been. It's been in the 120s for a while. So hovering in the 110s, can't be too mad about it. Hello, I am just quickly popping in because as I'm editing my wrap-up, I realized I did not mention which books were my favorite and least favorite this month. So I had two favorites this month because they were so different, but they were both nonfiction. So In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, really like this, was a very emotional read for me. It was an audiobook, nonfiction memoir about an abusive relationship she lived through. Just very emotional, heavy, really creative, just interesting all around, very good audiobook. I would assume the physical book also good. The other one would be The Dawn of Everything. I feel like this really had a significant shift in the way that I think about humanity. It sounds so big and broad, but I really do feel like this had such a profound effect in shifting the way I think about things. And maybe some of that is just being in a better mental headspace in general. But knowledge is power, man. You learn stuff, and it changes things when you know more. So those were my two favorites, and by far my least favorite was Invisible Women. Just for all the reasons I mentioned. The blindness to trans issues, seemingly on purpose, knowing what I have kind of read about the author, I would not recommend it. I don't feel like the few tiny little bits of interesting facts about women, or the few little parts that I did find interesting were worth first of all, just the book being boring as hell, but also not being worth like the erasure of trans folks. So yeah, those were my favorites and least favorites. Back to past Tyler. So those are the stats, the things I've read this month. I will check in with booktrovertbingo. Let me get my board. I have fit all my books on here, and I've decided I'm not going to go through all the bingos on here because there's a lot of them in a weird configuration, but I will talk about the one that I got, the only one this month that I got that with all November books. So I got True Story, which is a nonfiction read, Invisible Women, nonfiction about data bias in representing women. Debut or something new, Sleepwalking. So it was new to me, but also it was Meg Wurlitzer's debut novel. World Series. This was supposed to be a book from a series, and I did The Three Body Problem, sci-fi book that is a part of a series. Didn't really have a good time with it, but it still fulfills a prompt because I did finish it. 'Tis the Season. This is a book that is about, not necessarily about a holiday, but features a holiday, something like that. And so I did the basic 8. Halloween is a very big event in this book. There's a countdown to Halloween at one point. So I used the basic 8 for 'Tis the Season. And then found in translation, I used the first volume of Dementia 21 because that was a manga. So it was originally in Japanese. There are only 2 prompts I have not fulfilled yet at all. That is Murder They Wrote, which is very interesting because I tend to read a lot of dark, murdery things. However, I think there was some other books that I considered for that, but ended up going to one of the other prompts to get a bingo. And That's Not My Name. This is supposed to be a book by a author with a pen name or something like that, and I just haven't read anything by an author with a pen name. So yeah, that is my Booktrovert bingo. There will not be a vlog next week, but there will be a video. Yeah, that is really all I have to say about what I read this month. If you've read any of these books, feel free to leave a comment. Tell me what you did or didn't like about them. Otherwise, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye!